Hi. Strange times, huh? My name is Benjamin Nymark. I'm a senior lecturer here in human geography at the Lancaster Environment Center and part of the Political Ecology Research Group. I've been at LAC for about 6 years now, having trained as a human geographer in the US. Today I'm going to talk to you about the carbon blueprint of the US military. Actually, about two research projects. One about biofuels and the US Navy, and the second one about the US military's fuel consumption and their relationship with climate change. This is sort of an accidental or serendipitous research project, meaning we fell on it kind of by chance. When I say we, I mean I work alongside Dr. Patrick Bigger, who is also a lecturer in human geography here at the Lancaster Environment Center. We both sort of had broad interests in the U.S. military and their role as an environmental actor, but also as an economic actor. Their ability to sort of move markets. We know them as a geopolitical actor, but not as much as an environmental and economic one. We sort of thought through this using insights in a framework we call geopolitical ecology. This is a theoretical framework that combines the insights of political ecology, the unequal access to natural resources, with those of critical geopolitics, the relations between governments. We wanted to gain a deeper insight into the impacts of large institutions and their role in environmental change. So what does the U.S. military as an environmental actor look like, specifically with climate change? Well, to start off with, the military has privileged access and control to land, specific environments, and particular natural resources. Its overall scale and size, and its number of places it sort of exists globally, is just massive. Its purchasing power to pay off environmental damage and buy or use natural resources at will. It's also an advocate for favorable to itself environmental policy, and thus influences the way environmental policy plays out in the US and globally. This leads us to our first research project, which was called Weaponizing Nature. This was an in-depth study into the US Navy's biofuel program, a fleet of ships called the Great Green Fleet. This was an idea that the U.S. Navy had roughly around the mid-aughts when it began having significant trouble sourcing because of the danger of sourcing and also the expense of sourcing fuel for its forward operations during the War on Terror. It also began to think about its role in contributing to climate change. Began thinking through a program to use a combination of alternative fuel sources, right? Something called blended biofuels, or the use of a 50-50 mix of diesel fuel and biofuels in a fleet of ships. The Great Green Fleet, as it was called, aimed to source half its fuels from renewables by 2020. This included nuclear, of course. In turn, one part of the larger direction of the Department of Defense, DoD, was towards increasing its overall environmental footprint. This not only included biofuels, but it also included parts of packages including energy efficiency in its bases, LED light bulbs, base adaptation, right, to decrease its electricity use. But this, of course, lent itself to a larger question and a larger sort of paradox for us. What about its fuel use? Right? Clearly, the U.S. military uses a significant amount of fuel and therefore must contribute to climate change. And in a sense, really contributing to a significant number of problems that its first port of call to help, right? Flooding, humanitarian reasons, the relationship between climate change and different sort of faraway conflicts, This is what the U.S. military sees as threat multipliers, right? Aggregated stressors such as poverty, environmental degradation, political instability, and social tensions, conditions that enable sort of what it sees as potential future terrorist activity and other forms of violence, right? This is under a kind of postulate that many geopolitical actors called environmental security, right? One of the things we'd like to do in this paper was we talk about the problems of that, right? And as political ecologists, we really like to historicize the understanding of these threat multipliers, that there isn't a one-to-one relationship between environmental problems and conflict. This led us to thinking about, well, what are the hidden costs of having to be able to declare and wage war everywhere, right? For the U.S. military to work through conflict and wage war everywhere in the globe, it needs these vast supply chains, right? It needs fuel at all far-flung areas of the world, right? So we began to think, what is the larger carbon blueprint of the U.S. military? As you can imagine, it's quite enormous. And its supply chains are extensive. It relies on large supply chains, both corporate from the private sector, but also from the public sector, of container ships, trucks, cargo planes, pipelines, to supply its vast fuel needs. Our study calculated the contribution of these vast supply chains to climate change. The U.S. military is one of the largest polluters in history, consuming more liquid fuels and emitting more climate change gases than most medium-sized countries. If we kind of make this relationship, which we did in the paper, if the U.S. military were a country, its fuel usage alone would be roughly about the 47th largest consumer and emitter of greenhouse gases, sitting somewhere between Peru and Portugal. Right? In 2017 alone, the U.S. military burned 270,000 barrels a day and emitted more than 25,000 kilotons of carbon dioxide burning those fuels. The Air Force was purchased $4.9 billion US dollars worth of fuel, followed by the U.S. Navy at $2.8 billion. That's a lot of fuel. Our close colleague at calculating some of this also at the Cost of War Project in the Watson Institute at Brown University calculated that the U.S. military since 2001 and the global war on terror burned 1.2 billion or released 1.2 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas equivalent to roughly about 257 million passenger cars. That's more than double the amount of cars on the road in the U.S. today. Our work on this has been incredibly impactful. Translated in up to 5 different languages, a blog that we wrote for the conversation was the top 17th most downloaded media article of 2019. It was shared 200,000 times on Facebook. This is about as close to viral it comes for an academic. Really exciting stuff. Not bad for a sort of accidental research project. I'm really excited to share some of these insights with you because I think this provides a taster, or a little sample of some of the work that we do at Lancaster University. If you come, there are many opportunities, both small and large, to sort of be involved in exciting research like this. Your dissertation projects, your sort of the lectures you hear about and listen to in class, and some of the assignments you do will be on really exciting topics like this that link directly to some of our research. So we look forward to you coming and hopefully contributing in some way.